always come in. Hi, I'm Ryan. I am the co-author of Banned Book Club and author of many, many other books. I've worked on comics for Star Trek, Popeye, Garfield, Flash Gordon, all sorts of other things. Those are some of the books that I've done. I guess we're going to be started in a minute here. I'm going to see if I have any way of sharing this document.
Hi, everyone. I have it. Apologies for the rocky start. We're having an internet connection problem. I am co-host tonight, and hopefully our real host will be able to join us in a moment. I'm Andrea Fiorillo, head of public services at the Reading Public Library. We want to thank the Friends of the Library for making author events like tonight possible. And we want to give a warm welcome to Ryan Estrada. We are recording tonight's program and we'll be uploading it to YouTube. And I'm going to get to Ryan's introduction, even though he kind of had to introduce himself. So Ryan is an artist, author, and adventurer. After working with activists who used banned books to overthrow a dictator, working with a survivor who used banned books to escape a cult, then working with freedom to read organizations all over the world when his own book got banned. Ironically, Ryan Estrada has a unique perspective to bring to the importance of the freedom to read books and the dangerous historical context that keeps people trying to ban them. Ryan has a diverse background that has allowed him to work on many different projects, which are colorfully displayed on his website. I highly recommend checking it out after the program if you haven't already, and I will put the link in the chat. And before we get started, you are welcome to go to the Q&A section and start asking questions. And we'll open the questions up at the end of the evening. So without further ado, Ryan, please take it away.
Hi, so yeah, that's me. I'm Ryan. And so we're kind of talking about banned books here. And that's something that really wasn't on my radar for a long time. When I was a kid, like the kind of prevailing attitude was that like banned books were kind of like a joke. Can't ban a book in America. People will just read it anyway. But that's actually why Banned Book Club got greenlit. I just tweeted a story about my wife that I had found out after knowing her for over a decade that she had been in this banned book club. And our publisher was so shocked at the idea that there could have been state banned books in a democracy just 30 years earlier. And then come to find out when the book comes out, it's now a banned book in America. And America has changed so much in the few years that we've been working on that book that I was shocked. And when our book was banned in Florida, I volunteered to fly to Florida to speak at the same school board meeting where the guy was using our book as an example to rant about why librarians should be all in prison. And the librarians told me, actually, it's too scary. Please don't come. We're terrified of this guy and the consequences it could have for us. And so I ended up going to another city in Florida and talking and speaking with people, traveling all across the country and learning so much. So I'm very excited to answer any questions people have today about the book and book banning in America and around the world and throughout history.
Ryan, would you like to start taking questions right now?
Sure. Well, I mean, there in the document there were some questions you'd wanted to ask. Do you want?
Yeah, I can get
first?
to those too. We do have one audience question already.
Mm-hmm.
It's from a colleague, a librarian colleague. Hi, Andrea, and hi, Ryan. Thank you for doing this program. I can't stay the whole time, but we'll watch the recording. I'd love to know Ryan's thoughts on the current Scholastic Book Fair issue. Have you heard about that? Because Ryan's in Korea. Having diverse books be opt-in or opt-out or not available at all, and the dangers of soft censorship, chilling effects, etc. Thank you, which I do understand, Jenny, that Scholastic has backed down and apologized for that as of today.
Well, yeah, I do have perspectives because I actually wrote 2 Scholastic Book Fair exclusive books that are only available there, about dinosaurs. And so I am very interested in hearing that story, especially when they said that they were put in an impossible situation and they only had 2 choices, either either allow people to opt out of those books, or not publish them at all. And they kind of forgot the third option, which is just make the books available. And if a school doesn't want to have a book fair because of that, then Scholastic might lose some money. And they forgot to mention that because they didn't want to lose money. So yeah, they have said they backed down, but one of the very interesting things is if you look at the statement that they made to authors, and the statement they made to schools, they were very different. And it's still not sure what they're going to be doing about this. So yeah, I mean, I think that the danger is that people are starting to censor themselves, and that's a thing that's happening not just in publishers but in a lot of libraries. I've heard about a lot of libraries this year that the management is forcing librarians to censor themselves. Uh, there are a lot of events like this that I was invited to, and then a boss said, no, actually don't do that. We don't want to cause drama by talking about banned books. Or having book events canceled because they worry someone might complain. And the thing that's important to remember is the movement that's happening right now. There's all this talk about concerned parents across the country, and that is a lie that is being like politically decided to tell the story. But it's actually 60% of book bans in the last year were done by 11 people, and those 11 people are literally working for organizations whose job it is to spread these ideas because they make money off of private schools and they want to lower taxes. So they specifically decided to go against schools and libraries, and it's a very small group of people who are funded to do this. But because people repeat their story that these are concerned parents, the guy that banned book club, he says he's a concerned parent, but he does not have a child in the school district where he bans 200 books a month. He was paid to move to that county 1 year ago from New York to Florida because no one in that town was banning books, and they wanted someone to do it for political reasons. So
Ryan, can you talk about which group was behind that particular stunt?
Yeah, that's No Left Turn in Education in Clay County, Florida. And that's a Clay County, Florida Freedom to Read. They call themselves an organization. It's one guy, and organizations have popped up in other states, and they're all one person, and it's like basically their full-time job to get as many books banned per month as possible. And they're kind of tied with all. Like I saw an org chart once that I wish I could explain it, but there's so many lines going everywhere. But all the money comes from like the larger political think tanks and goes down to Mothers for Liberty, and then the money goes down to organizations like that. So they're all kind of connected, but in that case it was No Left Turn in Education.
Okay, yeah, that's full disclosure, I chair the Intellectual Freedom Committee for the Massachusetts Library Association, just as an aside. But yes, we have been seeing that, and we also are seeing just this spread through social media. So even some of the things that do feel like they're more grassroots from actual concerned parents, a lot of that outrage is being spread on social media, and it is very much a national effort instead of a local effort. All right, so I'm going to ask you some of Megan's questions that she had. She had some questions about your career. You have a passion for libraries, drawing, and sharing information. Was there a person or an event that inspired you to pursue this career path?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was making comics when I was a baby, like before I could talk. Like, I don't know how that decision was made that that's what I was going to do, but I just decided that's what I wanted to do and kept doing it. And then I decided I'd been amateur long enough, it was time to go pro when I was 6 years old. And I guess everything that happened in my career is because no one stopped to say, hey kid, you can't do that, you're 6. They just I said I want to learn how to send out submission packets to newspapers and syndicates, and my mom took me to the library, and the library was like, yeah, let me find you a book on how to put together a packet for submission. And it was the Waterford Library that I went to back then. I got to do a comic about that experience for school library journal uh, recently. And yeah, that just kind of, the fact that they treated me like a professional even though I was 6 years old, like gave me the career that I have today because I had such a head start. So yeah, that's why I've been passionate about libraries, and just having written these books about the importance of books, like, banned book club, like I said, it kind of fell in my lap. It's just, I was climbing a mountain with my wife and she casually mentioned that something reminded her of when she was hunted down by the police for reading books, and I'm like, wait, when you what? And then she told me the story, and then I interviewed all the other people that like risked their lives to read books, and how I learned how reading books helped defeat a dictator. We met Amy Rose to write Occulted and learned how books helped her escape a UFO death cult. I realized that, I always knew how important books were to me, but I realized how important books and making books available to people are for the world. And so that's why I'm now so passionate about, like, I do so many talks for libraries, and like basically anything a librarian asks me to do, I'm like, sure, I'll do it, because you're literally saving the world. So if I can help, let me.
Thanks, Brian. That's amazing. And I think Megan is back and may want to jump in here. But before we move on to the next question, can you tell us more about your wife's experience in this book and what this book is about? Because that is just such an amazing story.
Yeah. So, like I said, I had no idea about any of this. We'd been married for years. I'd known her for like 11 years. And then she casually mentioned, oh, yeah, I used to be hunted down by the police. And I'm like, for what? Like, oh, I smuggled banned books and stuff. No big deal. But yeah, it turns out that, in the 1980s, Korea was under a dictator. And Hyun Sook grew up not knowing that, because it had happened a generation before. And people were so beaten down by, like, we don't talk about it, we're not allowed to talk about it, we're not allowed to read about it, that people just stopped talking about this fact. And so it wasn't until she started college and she joined what she thought was, she was just like a cute boy invited her to a book club. So she thought, okay, cool, I'll go, hang out with these kids. She's just a nerd that likes reading. And then she found out it was an underground illegal book club that you could go to prison for joining. And she was terrified and she ran off. But then as she learned more, learned why they're reading banned books and what information they're trying to hide, she got more and more involved. And we wrote a book all about the experiences she had and how those experiences of book clubs across Korea helped lead to Korea being a free country that it is today.
All right, I think Megan's going to take the next one.
Yeah.
Welcome, Megan McCabe, Reading Public Library's teen librarian.
Hello. Thank you for dealing with my technical difficulties, but I'm so excited to have you here, Ryan. I read the graphic novel when it first came out, and I was just so taken with this story, and this has kind of been many years in the making, so I'm so excited to have you here and actually having an author talk with you. So that was my excited intro. But it seems like you've already kind of answered your love for libraries, and I'm not sure if you answered the part about drawing, but it was more of the next question is what drew you to the medium of comics and graphic novels to get into this type of career?
Yeah, like I said, all this happened when I was a baby, before I have memory. My mom's like, you learned to talk so that you could tell me you wanted to be a professional cartoonist. So it's just a thing that has always been what I do, and I've never really had a choice in the matter. And so it's the most interesting thing about that is that, working with Hyun Sook is someone who never was interested in comics, never wanted to write comics, never thought of herself as a writer. And then just because her husband is a cartoonist, it's like comics was a dorky thing that her husband does. When we were offered that book deal, it ended up suddenly, they asked me if I wanted to write a book about this because I tweeted about the story, and I'm like, I do, but I don't want it to be my book. It's Hyun Sook's story. I'm going to co-write it with her. And then she's like, I got to write a book. So we worked together, and it was interesting, like coming together for her to learn what I do. And now my wife's an award-winning best-selling comic author with it, which I think is amazing and hilarious. Because she still kind of thinks comics are a dorky thing that her husband does. And I'm like, you realize you've written 3 books.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that's so great about comics and graphic novels is that you can combine that storytelling with that visual art. And like you can work with those people who are like, oh, I'm not a visual person, I just have something to tell. Or those who have the visual and they're just like, I know how to tell this. So I thought that was a great partnership for both of you.
Yeah, it's been really interesting working with her on it. And then like one of the fun parts is when she actually got hired to translate her own book into Korean for the Korean edition. So at first it was her telling me the story and me at the keyboard. And then when we went to the Korean version, we just switched places where she was at the keyboard asking me questions about the script. And so she got to do both parts of the process. And then the new books that I'm illustrating, she's there for that and seeing how I do that. So we're kind of, turning her into a graphic novelist.
I think that's great. That's really awesome. So the other part of like kind of asking about your career, the question I had here is you can see this all over your website that you are an adventurer, you love and trying new things and exploring new things. So do you have anything like new adventures, new projects in the near future that you're excited about that you're allowed to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many new projects that I'm working on. My adventures right now are mostly I'm working on getting my Grand Slam medal for bike riding in Korea. In Korea, they set up a network of bike trails so you can see basically every city in Korea. And they hide little phone booths with stamps, and they give you a passport. And I already got the medal for riding my bike across the country from Busan to Seoul, and now I'm working on the Grand Slam, which is every bike trail in Korea. So I go on little 1 week long bike trips. That's my adventuring these days. And the new projects are Hyun Sook and I are working on 2 new books. I just finished illustrating the follow-up to Band Book Club, which is called No Rules Tonight, and I just started illustrating the 3rd book about her experiences in college called Good Old Fashioned Korean Spirit. And so those will be coming out in the next couple of years.
Well, I'm very excited for those. I'm glad that there's going to be a continuation of it. I think it's a really great glimpse into a part of history that I think Americans are not really aware of. So it's very cool that you're bringing awareness to that. So the next couple of questions that I have are more so about the book. Andrea already asked about your wife and kind of like how you got to your story and how you became involved in it. But I wanted to know, I'm sure that there are some people here who are attending who are interested in writing their own stories. And I wanted to know, what was your process for writing your book? Like, did you have a routine, or how do you go about research? Because I know this is a question that a lot of people ask, and I know that some of my teens ask, they think there's a right way to do something, but I always remind them everyone's process is different, but I would love to hear what yours is.
Yeah, for me, every book I write, the process is different. A lot of books are just fully from my imagination, weird stories based on my experiences. And a lot of times my process takes like a decade, where I'll think about a book for 10 years before I ever write a word. And it's just kind of like based on something I had, gave me an idea. And I just think, like when I'm on a bus or when I'm riding a bike or when I'm taking a walk, I just think about the story and watch it in my head like I'm popping in a DVD, and it changes every time. And the boring, like my editing process is like the boring parts I forget about, and because I never wrote them down, and the more exciting parts like pop in because I keep thinking about it. So that's my normal process. But when Band Book Club came about, that's very different. It's not just my ideas. I'm telling a true story. And also there was a deadline, so I couldn't really take 10 years to think about it. So it really came about the process started with just me interviewing Hyun Sook and asking her questions. because when we first started, when we offered a book deal, I asked Hyun Sook, like, do you think there's enough story there to make a whole book? She's like, not really. We just read books. It wasn't that exciting. That's because everyone she knows, all her friends have the same story. So like to her, that's boring. But I'm like, we didn't know that. Like, now, of course, history has repeated itself. And now there are actually banned book clubs in America secretly reading banned book club. So now it's happening in America, but at that time it wasn't. And every follow-up question I asked her, I'm like, wait, you did what? And then after that, the interesting thing about this is even though we're writing nonfiction, it's weird writing nonfiction. I realized every nonfiction ever written is still kind of fiction because, you know, you're writing conversations people had that you weren't there for. Or even in Hyun Sook's case, she was there for, but it's 30 years ago. She doesn't remember the exact wording of every conversation. And in order to tell a story, you kind of have to move things around. Like all the events at Banned Book Club happened over 4 years. But if you just keep like, let's jump forward a year, let's jump forward 2 months. Oh, she moved, she, you know, all this happened. It's going to get too confusing for the audience. So we just kind of condensed it as though it happened in a shorter period of time. And so we're, you know, we're taking these real things, but we still had questions. So Hyun Sook traveled across Korea and reunited with all her old Banned Book Club members. She reunited with teachers, with her parents, with her family. And I gave questions that I had. She wrote down questions she had. She would interview them, come back and translate it for me. And then I would put it into the script, show it to her. She'd give feedback. I'd change it. Then we'd show it to those Banned Book Club members, her family members, and give feedback from everyone to make it as accurate as possible. So that was a much more, you know, detailed, like there's a very specific thing we're looking for to be as real as possible. So that was a whole different process.
That's really cool. I was going to ask if you got to travel. So I think that's really cool. That's a really great source of inspiration. So with moving on with that, I know I missed a little bit of it, but I think you were talking about banned books and challenges kind of in the US and potentially in Korea. But I know it says that in your bio, it mentions that one of your own books was banned. I wanted to know which one was that, if you hadn't already mentioned it. And could you elaborate more on your experiences with book bans and challenges?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, Banned Book Club was the book that was banned. My experiences with book banning, my first experience was when I was in middle school, and I did a comic for the school newspaper about a friendly bug who had adventures. It was called Wendell the Wasp. And then without my knowledge, they had someone else redraw my comic to change it because the principal thought that the name Wendell the Wasp was offensive to white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And I'm like, sir, I am 12. I don't know what that means. I made a comic about a bug. And then I just kind of quit that and got a job at a newspaper instead. But it wasn't until Banned Book Club to realize how serious an issue it is. So Banned Book Club was first banned in Clay County, Florida. More recently, it was banned in Kentucky. And yeah, like I was saying before, this wave of book banning in America that's happened so suddenly, like a lot of the kids that I talk to don't even realize that this is a new thing. This is a very recent, not that books haven't been banned before, but this is a very recent, very specific movement that people are putting money into making it happen. And books are being banned in bulk, like 200 at a time. People are like, I've seen the videos of the guy that banned her books showing up at school board meetings with a stack that tall of book challenges and screaming about how the librarians need to be in jail. And so I got to see, I have a copy of the actual document that got our book banned. And I have this because I actually have a copy of this organization's entire spreadsheet that has every single word they've written on any book they've ever gotten banned, or even ones they're planning on getting banned. And the interesting thing about that is seeing, like I said, the things that go on the media about concerned parents. The other lie that happens is they always go on, do interviews and go on TV and say, they're putting pornography in schools. We're just getting rid of the pornography. And that's why it's so hard to fight against this, because they don't care about lying. So they can just say that and end there. And we have to do an hour-long talk about what's really going on because we care about the facts. So the reason that my book got banned is number one, it specifically promotes other deselected titles. So saying the names of other banned books that were banned 30 years ago in a dictatorship got it banned. They think that it's too anti-government, which is weird because his whole thing is going to government meetings and yelling at the government where he currently lives. And mine is about teens whose government was taken over by a military coup, and they want their government back. So I think ours is more pro-government than him. It says that it will damage student souls. And then I actually emailed this guy to ask him if he had any questions about our book, because I'm like, judging by what you said, I'm not sure you read it. And he says, oh, I haven't read it. So he hasn't read the book. And as an example, like I went and read his entire, it's thousands and thousands of pages. I've read a lot of it. And a lot of people, like, when I tell them that it's all a lie, they think, well, he thinks it's pornography. But the thing about this document is he doesn't know people read this. So this is where the mask is off. He doesn't have to pretend. One of the books that got banned right alongside Banned Book Club was called Zen Shorts. And that is a children's book about stories about kindness illustrated with cartoon bears. And that was banned because they said its stories of radical empathy were incompatible with Christianity. And there was one story about a robber raccoon who broke into an old bear's house, and the bear felt bad for him and gave him his jacket. And that there's a whole 5-page document about how awful it is to teach children kindness, and that's indoctrination, and they should have instead taught the castle doctrine so that children should know they're allowed to shoot the raccoon. And so it's a very political movement. And so that's why, even though he hasn't read this book, it seems like if someone is going, like, our book is about history repeating itself, and history is very much repeating itself in America right now. People banning books for political reasons. And a book that is about how dictators use the exact playbook that they're using to take power and tells how to fight back against it, I'm sure that might have had something to do with why he wanted it banned and why other states are now banning it.
Well, that is a lot, but I'm very impressed that you got the entire document and have that displayed in your office there. So with the book challenges, that was more so like talking about a personal experience with that one book. So has only one book of yours been challenged, or did you mention that there were others?
So far, it's just been Banned Book Club.
Just been Banned Book Club.
Hit their radar. But that's been banned in 3 states so far. So
in 3 states.
Yeah. And I've heard people complaining about Occulted, but no one's filled out the form yet that I know of. But that's the thing about what's going on right now, is my books could have been banned and I don't know about it, because, you know, places like Pen America and Florida Freedom Read Project have reached out to me and told me about these. But now, like, you know, books are being banned 200 at a time. And so a lot of authors, probably their books have been banned, they don't know about it in certain places. And there are organizations that are trying to get all this information, but it's happening so much that information isn't really out there.
And that's why it's so important to report. I see Andrea popped up. Did you have something you wanted to add, Andrea?
Oh yeah, I was just back to an earlier question from the audience about soft censorship. It's not just that you don't necessarily know about the formal challenges that result in the removal of a book. It's the people who get rid of the book, walk off with the book, who hide the book, who the staff that are scared to buy the book, the school administrators who want it put in a separate section or labeled. I mean, there are just so many ways to chill people's freedom to read and access to ideas. So it's so much more than what is happening formally to remove books. And in Massachusetts, I think that soft censorship in some ways is the greater threat than in a state like Florida, where schools are going through their entire collection, making sure that they're complying with the new censorship laws. But the chilling effect and the effect it has on all of us who are working in the book industry, whether we're librarians or educators or publishers or authors or readers, is very real.
Yeah, and like the example of what happened in Florida, it didn't start out with all this happening. What happened was when people complained, the administration said, "Look, we don't want to be known for banning books, so we strongly suggest that you deselect these titles." And deselect is a term I know you guys know, but people reading, deselect means like if a library has a book about like how to use Windows 95 and you're like, we don't really need that anymore, we can get rid of. You're not banning the book, you're just like, no one needs this book anymore. And so, or this book is damaged, we'll get rid of it. So they're like, we strongly think that you should personally decide to deselect this title, or we might have to defund your library or fire you. And so the librarians then, like in fear for their jobs, like chose to remove those two books. And then their bosses are like, okay, great, here's 200 others we want you to deselect, and they said no. And so then that's how things drastically changed. Now in Clay County, librarians are not even allowed to choose books anymore. They have a panel that chooses books for them. And so a lot of people I talk to, they're like, well, that happens in Florida, but that's never going to happen. I'm in a very blue area or something, that doesn't happen where I live. And it wasn't happening in Clay County. They, like I said, they hired a guy to move there to do that. And their goal is to get someone like that everywhere. And it's just a matter of time and money before they can do that. And so a lot of places, like everyone I talk to, all the librarians I talk to are like so exhausted. They're giving everything they have to fight back against this, but they all have like people on boards and people above them that are like, I'm from Michigan. I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm being very specific, but there's a place near where I grew up that is when I talk to people, like it's a place they thought that'll never happen, but there's a boss that works there that keeps making rules about like, I don't want this to happen here, I don't want this drama to come to us, so I'm just going to be proactive. And like he told them, I want you to make a display for Banned Book Week because we want to show that we care about banned books, but you can't put any books that are currently banned. Like you can't put any books about gay people or black people because that might offend people. And it's like, well, who are we making a display against? Ourselves? Like, you're the one banning books. And same place where they tried to set up a one of these workshops and it was banned. So if you look on paper, there's no book banning in that area, but there is a huge amount that, like, I've heard so many stories that like so many books have been banned just by a guy going like, I don't want the drama. So that's what's happening in America right now, is that you can never know how many books are being taken away from children because there's so many different ways that it can be done. And a lot of it's just out of fear, that soft censorship you said, where people are like, I'm afraid of drama. So yeah, like I said, when I was a kid, the thing was you can't ban a book in America, just more people want to read it. And if you're in a town where like one book gets banned or like a book gets banned in a school, people can rally. But when it's 200 books a month, like I said, a lot of times the authors don't even know about it. So a lot of these books by authors that people don't already know about, these books are just disappearing and children are never finding out about them. And then after a library spends a year fighting to get a book back on a shelf, if a similar book comes out, they might say, you know what, I haven't slept in a year, I already have a book like this, maybe I just won't buy this new book. And there are people, the people that go into being a librarian because they care about this are fighting against it, but there are people higher up that don't let them make those decisions.
I just am going to jump in and say, I find that in a state like Massachusetts, where we have like 90% of the public is with us. I mean, and that's true. The rest of the nation, like 70% of the public is against censorship, right? But in Massachusetts, it's even higher, and our our representatives are with us, and for the most part, our school boards and trustees are with us. And yet there's still this fear of getting into the fray on these issues. And if a place as privileged as Massachusetts cannot stand up for democratic values, then what can we expect for the rest of the nation, for the places where democracy has been struggling and taken root much more recently than the United States? So I guess I'm just saying, hey, get some courage and speak out, because you are in the majority. You shouldn't be scared.
Yeah, the thing is, anywhere this is happening, someone needs to be willing to go to a school board meeting or a library board meeting or a city board meeting, because there is, I'm sure there is, wherever, not ever, but almost everywhere, there is someone that goes to that school board meeting every month to complain about books. And if that's all that the people hear, the people on this board hear, they're gonna think like, oh, this is how the people feel. I hear about it every month. But that's because the people who go to the school board and complain, they don't care if they have all the information or if they're saying the right information. For everyone else, it's like, well, this is a complicated issue with a lot, I had to like fly to America and talk to people and learn about what's really going on to be able to talk about it. And so it's harder for people, it's more scary for people to go talk about an issue that they understand that they don't know all the aspects of. Whereas the other people just, they know they don't know everything and they don't care because they just want to get their idea across. But if you can just stand up at a meeting and say, I am thankful that the library carries so many books that are so important to so many people, that's going to change so much. Like I said, when I tried to do it in Florida, they said, please don't come. There would be too much feedback for you speaking at the board meeting. But that's because I'm an outsider. And they'd think like, who's this guy flying in from Korea to tell us what to do? But if someone from the community stands up and does that, it's the world. It changes everything.
Yeah. So Megan, I'm going to jump in on this. There's a Q&A from the audience, and I'm going to jump in because I have some insider knowledge about this. So Christine says, Massachusetts ranks 5th in the US for banned books. Okay. So I want to just address that a little bit. One of the reasons why I firmly believe that we are ranking so high on book challenges right now is that, and it is a challenge, not a ban in Massachusetts case. There are very few books that have actually been pulled from the shelf. It has happened, and more of it is soft censorship than an outright ban. But we're really good at reporting. So I just want to put that out there, that when we look like we're ranking right up there with like Texas and Florida, who are really like very all gusto about these challenges and bans, I really do believe that Massachusetts looks like we are rocking censorship because we just are very good at reporting, which I know I have advocated for fiercely, that we get this reported to the Office of Intellectual Freedom at ALA. So take some heart from that. We're just like straight A students. And then there's a comment about the difference between a challenge and a ban. So a challenge is the process that says we want this removed. And that's regardless of whether it gets removed or not. A ban is when it actually is removed. One of the talking points by current censors is that it's not really banned if it's available on Amazon, or it's not really banned if it's available in the public library, but not in the school library. But that argument, I'm just going to say this, it's really, that's not a fair argument, because something getting taken away from a government entity like a public school or a public library is a form of censorship that's very different than a capitalist organization like Amazon, who can make these choices with a little less impact to intellectual freedom in the law than if a public entity, a government entity, censors something. But also for most children and most people who don't have access to excellent internet and devices, your local collection is your collection, and there isn't anything else. And if you don't find something as you're browsing, if it's not available, it is banned to you, because you're not going to know to ask for it. You're not going to see yourself reflected in those stories, and you're not going to be able to go and find it. And then Christine says 5 libraries across the US started by Brooklyn Public Library will furnish an electronic copy of the book to any student. And to add to that, Boston Public Library did just join the ranks of that. So they too are offering these books that have been the most frequently banned to anybody who wants to get an e-card with BPL, which is a very simple, no barrier process. Thanks, Christine. Those are great points.
Yes, and amazing that we have Andrea here to really talk about those points. She's fighting the good fight every day. So I just have one more, I guess you could say, heavy question, but I wanted to end on a light one. But I wanted to make sure, did you finish your last thoughts before I move on to that next question?
Well, I'll jump in at that. Like, I find it hilarious, their thing. Like, it's not banned, it's still available somewhere else. Like, if I go like punch someone McDonald's and they ban me from McDonald's, I can't say, well, I'm not banned because I can still go to Burger King. I'm still banned. If it's banned from a school library, it was banned. And the difference between a challenge and a ban, in some, in some places that's very different, but in the reason things are so scary in Florida is they passed a law that if anyone challenges any book, it has to be removed immediately, or that librarian could be charged with a felony. So a challenge has to immediately become a ban. And that's terrifying, that any complaint about any book immediately leads to it being removed from shelves. So yeah, and I think that the danger of banning a book somewhere, like if you ban a book from a school or a public library by saying that it's inappropriate for the setting, that's like, there are people who relate to that book. There are people with lives similar to that book that see themselves in that book. And by telling a kid, this book about someone like you is unsuitable to be shown in public, that's like saying you're unsuitable for public. Yeah, you can go to Amazon to buy that book, or you can go to a bookstore to buy that book, but that's telling people that you are not worthy of being in these public spaces, and the children aren't going to go to a bookstore and buy that book if they don't know it exists. And just having books that kids can relate to, either in positive ways, like just banning books about queer people or people of color having happy lives are being banned, but also books about trauma. When we wrote Occulted, Amy Rose didn't know she was in a cult until she read books about cults. And even though it was a difficult book to write, she knew that someone else might find that her book and learn the same thing she did and know how to get out of a situation. So having books about difficult topics available for kids to find and not have to ask a parent to buy it for them from a website, where it might be the lessons they learn might be things the parents don't want them to know about what's happening in their life. If someone is dealing with abuse, it's very important for these books to be available in a library and not removed.
So moving on, but still in the same vein of this conversation. So we've talked a lot about what's happening in the US, but I wanted to know, what's kind of the climate in Korea? Do you have any parallels that you're seeing between the two countries? Because you have this unique perspective of living in a totally different country.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like Hyun Sook is shocked by what she's learning about America, because our book is about how terrible it was in Korea, and now the two countries have completely changed. Or in Korea, that's not an issue anymore, book banning. And now in America, there are things happening that terrify Hyun Sook, even knowing what she's been through. And even beyond Korea, as an example that I use, Banned Books Week 2022, I did talks like this for libraries across America, and then I did talks in China and Vietnam where I was asked not to mention the topic of banned books. And then this year, I was asked back to schools in China and Vietnam to talk about book banning, And in a lot of schools and libraries in America, I was told I'm not allowed to talk about the topic. So things have changed so much that now all of the countries that like were in terrible situations are now looking at America and being like, "Ooh, what's going on over there?" So I will say that as a funnier note to that, the one book that is banned in Korea now, the dictator who banned all the books and tried to have my wife thrown in prison, he actually, for his war crimes, was sentenced to death. And then the next president pardoned him. And one of the rules of the pardon was he was not allowed to write a book. And he wrote a book about why he's innocent. And so that book is banned. That's the only book. The guy who banned all the books, he's now the only one with a banned book.
So now he gets to experience a little bit of what he did.
Yeah.
So, well, I that's really interesting to see like the differences in the countries and kind of how it's ebbing and flowing in different ways. I have one last question, but all these questions have been really great and really informative, and thank you so much. But I wanted to end on a little bit of a fun note. If you had any drawings you'd like to show us, it could be something that you've done for band book club or something you're working at you're excited about, because I really love the visual aspect of the graphic novel and seeing what you're working on.
All right. Well, I'll show you the cover, the original art to the cover to No Rules Tonight. This is the follow-up. It's kind of a standalone book, but with the same characters. It was originally pitched as a joke as the Band Book Club Christmas special. And the idea is that Christmas was a very different holiday under the dictatorship, because you could go to jail if you were out after midnight for generations. And the one exception, because the curfew was originally started by American soldiers, there was an exception that you could go out on December 24th. And since that date didn't really mean anything to anyone in Korea, I mean, there were people that celebrated it, but it wasn't like a huge thing. It became the one night where you could do anything you want. It was a night of debauchery and partying. And there's a lot of people of Hyun Sook's generation that have September birthdays, if you want to do that math and figure out what I'm saying there. And so it's a story about like, what would you do if you had one night of freedom? And I just finished illustrating that. Oh, and that's the whole book right there.
Look at that.
A lot of art. Let me see if I can find some good ones in here. That's the whole crew on their mountain trip. We got a lot of the mask dance stuff going on. The club that she was in. So yeah, that's the follow-up, and I've literally just yesterday started drawing that's the first panel of the third book that's called Good Old Fashioned Korean Spirit.
Very cool.
That's what's to come.
So to link with that, so I see a lot of like drawing. So what medium are you using? Are you using like ink or a pencil or a combination?
Yeah, I ink by hand. For the new book, I started using these little blue line pencils just because there was way too much erasing that I needed to do for the last book. So I do this so you can just remove it digitally. And then I use these preppy fountain pens in various sizes to ink after that.
And do you ever do any digital type of art, or you still stick very much to like hand drawing, or do you do a mixture of both?
I wish I could draw digitally. I can't. I'm just not good at it. I'm too old, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I do, like all the lettering and borders and things digitally, but the drawing itself I have to do on paper, like an old man.
No, you have mastered a craft, and your hand knows how to do that. So that's really great, and we all appreciate the craft. So that is the end of my questions. That's pretty much the end of our program. But I wanted to give you and Andrea, if you wanted to have like any kind of closing remarks of how you wanted to end this lovely program about the Band Book Club.
Well, I'll just end by saying that reading is incredibly important. Just in what I've learned from these books and how history repeats itself and how much books on difficult topics, or even books about joy and happiness, have changed people's lives and changed countries and freed people. It is important that we know what's going on and that we recognize it and that we do something about it. And whenever you hear someone saying like, oh, all these parents are concerned about pornography in schools, you say, actually, that's not true. 11 people were paid to say that. And it's important we go to board meetings and speak up and say how important it is for books to be out there, and make sure that they're available to kids, and to support our libraries. Go to your library, make sure your card is up to date, check out books, go to events, because that's all what gives libraries the funding they need to keep giving kids the books that they need and adults the books that they need, and fighting back when people try to take them away.
Beautifully said. That was said really well. Andrea, did you have anything extra you wanted to say?
Of course I did. So Ryan, that was amazing. Thank you so much. You were out there doing the good work, and we really appreciate the support for libraries. If this is a topic that interests you, Massachusetts has 4 pending bills to ban book banning, just like the state of Illinois already did. So 2 of those bills are coming up for a hearing on Monday morning at 10 a.m. at the State House in room 1A. If you have thoughts, you can write up some testimony, or you can come show up and let your elected reps know how you feel. So that's it. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Ryan, and thank you, Andrea, for helping me out. And for this lovely program and this chance to talk about a very important topic. This has been recorded. It'll be available on our YouTube channel, and I'll include some important links and good resources for everyone to have access to. And I'm not sure if this was mentioned in the beginning, but we'll be doing the raffle of our lovely bags. I just wanted to show you, this is an example of one, is Let Freedom Read. And we have Unite Against Banned Books. They're all different colors, so 10 of you will be very lucky to get that. And also your lovely copy of your very own banned book club. So thank you so much for this evening, and I hope you attend more library programs. Thank you. Bye.
Good night.